189 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. I'm so glad you're with us. Welcome. Hope things are going well for you. We are catching our breath after the February 2018 bar exams and now starting to turn our attention to July and, believe it or not, February 2019. Yeah, we've got people already studying for that exam as well. If this is your first time on the podcast with us, welcome. Every Wednesday we come together to talk about all things bar exam related, and you can acquire these podcasts in several different ways. You can listen to the audio versions on Apple iTunes or on iHeartRadio or on Spotify. If you prefer to watch these episodes, you can do that too. Just go to celebrationbarreview.com/189. That's the episode number for today, and you'll see the entire episode on video along with the show notes. So a couple different ways to do that. We also have the opportunity for you to go back in our archives and catch all of the episodes going back to episode number 1. By doing that, and to do that, just go to celebrationbarreview.com/podcasts, and you'll see the link at the top of our page there. And all of the show notes and all of the prior episodes are there. And we encourage you to do that. There's a lot of great information. We've been providing this podcast for about 3 years now. So a lot of opportunity to share ideas and thoughts with you there. Also appreciate how many of you share the podcast with others that you know, and we would love to get your honest ratings and reviews. That's one of the ways that this podcast gets a greater, wider application and awareness. So if you just take a couple of minutes, it'll take about 30 seconds, I think, to do it. Just go to your iTunes rating and click on Extra Mile Podcast and put in a rating and review. We'd appreciate that a lot. I want to let everybody know before we get into today's episode that we do have a special event coming up on Thursday night, March 15th. We're going to be doing a free webinar called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. This is a look at the powerful, proven way to pass. And we'll be taking a look at case studies of successful students. We'll look at the step-by-step process that we've found over the years works to help people pass the bar, even people who failed as many as 20 times before. And I think you're going to really love being a part of this webinar. It's totally free. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time live. And I really encourage you to join us. You do have to sign up in advance, and you can do that here on the video webinar page. There's a link at the bottom of the page. Or if you're listening to this, you can check out the show notes. Or you can go to our website at celebrationbarreview.com, and you'll see a button there to claim your free spot. Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern does not work for you. You will also notice that there is a free on-demand version of the webinar. You can watch anytime, any day of the week, and all you have to do is sign up on that same location, select the date and time. Of course, I'm not there live, but I'll answer your questions via email. So whatever way you choose to do it, I hope you'll check out this webinar. It's great material and incredibly helpful, particularly as you're starting out your studies. So I hope you'll join us on Thursday. Well, in today's episode, what I wanted to do was to just take a brief look at a couple of stories that I've read recently in the news. It's not going to be a real long episode, but I saw a couple of stories that intrigued me. Not that I necessarily agreed or liked them, but I thought they would be worth checking out, and we'll link to them in the show notes so that you can read the original source material as well. But I thought we'd just talk a little bit about what's going on, because we're in this lull period between the exam and the first set of results. We'll get early results from the bar exam in mid-April. Actually, the first week of April, we'll have a couple of small jurisdictions. So in the month of March, we're kind of in this in-between time, and it's a good opportunity for us to kind of check out what's going on around the world and what's going on in terms of the bar exam. And so I found 2 stories that really intrigued me this week, and I wanted to share them with you. The first one was reported by our friends at Above the Law, and I use the word friends in an air quote position. I don't often agree with them, and I actually don't agree here particularly. But one of their columnists, a woman by the name of Jill Switzer, wrote an article on March 7th talking about California and the California bar examiners who are going to use psychology and a study on psychology to help law students pass the bar exam. Now, Ms. Switzer will tell you by her own admission that she is something of a dinosaur when it comes to technology and approaches to the law and approaches to the bar exam. I think she's been in practice for something like 30 years, so I can appreciate her dinosaur bones. I'm certainly in that same situation myself. She's actually 40 plus years to be accurate. And so I applaud the fact that she is thinking about all these new things and interesting things coming up, but I would say that she and I have a somewhat different view on how one should approach the bar. I think Jill comes at this from the standpoint of just tough it out. Just get in there, take that bar exam, study, memorize, gut it out, be tough like me. Okay, fine, I get that. And for some people, that's all they have to do. But when you're looking at bar results that are consistently under 50% in California, and in fact, I suspect for this February we'll see an overall pass rate probably less than 35%. The old gut it out, stick it out, shake it off kind of, 3 yards in a cloud of dust approach to the bar exam just really doesn't make much sense. And I think that more and more the trend is moving towards a holistic approach to study, a different approach to study, something we've been doing for a very long time, but now I think is beginning to gain some mainstream acceptance. Well, in any event, what's happening is that the California Bar for July 2018 has agreed to invest in a study with a group called the Productive Mindset Intervention Research Team. I don't know. In any event, their goal is to work on whether or not psychology of the bar and the way that you approach the mindset of the bar would make any difference in your ability to pass. Now, what they said when talking to the Bar Board of Trustees was that productive mindset interventions, when compared to the struggles experienced when studying, as learning, and as pointing to where further effort and attention would be productive to promote success. In other words, can we intervene and help people get better if they're struggling when it comes to their studies? What are these productive mindset interventions? Well, according to this group, these are moments in which you can help students to appraise their learning and their performance challenges. You could see them as being common challenges, surmountable, and even useful. But in other words, to help people say, what do we do when we're faced with these hurdles or problems? Now, the reality is that may or may not be successful in the form that they're going to do it. But what's going to happen is that for the July 2018 exam, if you're taking the exam in California, you're going to receive an opportunity to opt into this study and consent to have your bar exam scores evaluated for purposes of determining this intervention's effectiveness. The study is going to be done entirely online, and you'll receive the email in early May, and then you'll get booster emails in June and July to help measure what's going on. Now, they haven't specifically identified what the intervention will consist of, but what they have said is that there'll be 2 groups. You'll be assigned either to an active control group where students would learn study strategies, or a treatment condition where students would receive the productive intervention. In other words, traditional bar study versus something else. We don't know what the something else is. Now, this group has told the state bar that they think that passing bar rates will improve for the people in the intervention treatment condition, and that's going to be their hypothesis for this. So the report from this group says that they did an online study and they talked to focus groups in the LA area after the July 2017 exam, and that as a result of that, and I'm quoting, it strongly supports the conclusion that a well-tailored productive mindset intervention will improve performance on the July 2018 bar exam. Duh? Do you think? I mean, this is... I don't even know what to tell you, folks. We've been talking about this concept of mindset intervention for more than a decade now. And we've had greater success than the overall bar pass rates for more than a decade now. I don't think this is any big surprise to me or to our staff or to our students. I'm really kind of tickled by the fact that the bar examiners are just now getting around to this. But the reality is that the way people learn and the way that they overcome challenges is not by studying harder or studying longer or doing more or memorizing more or making more flashcards. And I recognize that Miss Switzer and others of her generation, that's how they did it. But frankly, they were taking a different bar exam than the one you're going to be taking in 2018 or 2019. 40 years ago, it was important to know the law cold, to memorize it, because you didn't have all of the applications that could provide information at the click of a button or by simply calling on the name of a Google or an Apple or a Microsoft intelligent assistant. Today, knowing the elements is not a big deal. It just really isn't. And clients are not paying their attorneys hundreds of dollars an hour to recite the elements of law. Now, one could make the argument that that's never been what a good counselor did anyway, but you could at least understand the importance in the bar exam of memorizing and reciting elements up to a certain point in time. But today, that's not the skill that's being tested. And because it's not the skill being tested, I think way too many people misapply their efforts and their energies, and so they try to study harder. They try to do more. Well, what this program in California, I think, is getting at is what we've known for a long time and have taught and really emphasized, and that is that the mindset that you've got going in, the way that you feel about challenges, the way that you approach problems and you seek to solve them, rather than by crunching out material and information, but by thinking cognitively about it, thinking creatively about it, writing in a clear and concise way on essays and performance tests, answering intuitively on the multi-state, is far more important and far more valuable and far more successful than these traditional methods. Now, one word, if you're in our course, you don't need to participate in this study because, frankly, I don't want you moved over into their control group where they tell you to use traditional study standards. That's not what we do at all. We're not playing a research game with our students. We've said, empirically, straightforwardly, and unashamedly, we're going to be in that second group. We're going to do those interventions with you throughout. We're going to help you find the inner genius that you've got. We're going to help you use your hidden talents and the talents that you had before you went to law school or when you were in law school or even after law school to be successful on the bar. Why? Because it works. That's why we use tools like photo reading and paraliminal recordings and meditation, why we do drop-ins, 5-minute drop-ins mentally to get you in the right mind frame before the exam. There's all sorts of things that we've encountered and worked on over the years that we see improves the productivity and the success of our students, not just in California, but everywhere. So I'm glad that California is kind of coming to the party, albeit about a decade late. I'm glad that they're willing to explore the possibility that this is not about brute force when it comes to being successful on the bar exam. What will the results of that study be? Well, I think they'll discover, as they intend, that the people that have the intervention will do better than those that do not. But I will say that a modest intervention, 1 or 2 emails, is not really all that significant. What we do is consistent and paced out over many, many weeks. It includes many different tools and techniques, and it is absolutely central and core to our approach. So, how woo and crazy is it? I don't think it's woo at all. I think the only thing that's crazy is for people that have been around forever that didn't go through this and don't really know what the existing current bar exam looks like. I think it's a little silly for them to comment and weigh in on this stuff. I'm sure that Miss Switzer is I know she's a well-respected writer for Above the Law, but really I thought this article was snotty. And I thought it was snide. And, we'll see what happens, but I would still put our students up against the ones even in this test in California to see how they do. So that's one article. We'll link to it in the show notes. Feel free to comment and let me know. Maybe you think I'm being too harsh, but I think it's moving in the right direction, but too little, too slow, and we think it's more important to move forward quickly. Second story I wanted to share with you comes from the National Jurist. And, Jack Crittenden and the folks at the National Jurist I've known for many, many years. In fact, they've asked me to write an upcoming story for them. I'm going to do that sometime in the month of March. And I know that they went around to all the different bar reviews and asked people to write different articles for them. And I happened to come across one that was written by Jamie Mulbrake. She is a director with Themis, and she calls it Maximizing Your Bar Exam Essay Score in One Step. Yeah, right. I loved it. I don't know Jamie. I presume that Jamie is a very bright person and who has done well and certainly passed a bar exam. But I will tell you that I thought this article was a load of crap. There was nothing about her approach that I think is beneficial or useful to people. And I wanted to call it out because I don't want people following this approach, certainly not in our course, to think that this is how you should study and write a good bar exam essay. So here's her approach to this. She says the only proven method of passing the bar is to actually know the law. Every subject that you test has an intrinsic structure to it in which you can organize the material, memorize the elements, and keep the information accessible for immediate recitation. Oh my gosh, she must be hanging out with Jill Switzer. This is not what the bar exam is about. I'll just say it again. It is absolutely not the skill that's being tested. And I think when bar reviews and people in a position of influence keep saying this stuff, they're really doing a disservice to people. There is nothing about memorizing the elements that's called for in an essay. That is not what's going on. Keeping the information accessible for immediate recitation means memorizing, and that is not what goes on. In the practice of law, no one memorizes. I just did an interview with a practicing attorney who was a former student of ours, and I asked him the question, when's the last time you memorized the law? He said, never. I said, when's the last time you recited the elements? He said, never. I mean, this is the reality of practicing law. But unfortunately, what we've got is still this mindset that that's what you should be doing. So what this article says is that what you have to do, first of all, you have to write what the rule is. She says in a torts negligence problem, you have to show that in order to prove negligence, the plaintiff must show a duty owed by the defendant, a breach of that duty, a causal relationship to the breach and the injury, and that the plaintiff has sustained damages compensable by law. And she claims that those are free points. You know what? They're free nothings. They're a nothing burger. You get nothing for it. There's no skill involved in that. There's nothing that the examiners go, wow, we are so impressed that you had memorized that paragraph. What would you use that for in the practice of law? Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. All that means is that you could memorize rules and elements. And frankly, if you could memorize the rules and elements of negligence, big deal. I mean, it was first semester law school, and it's of no value here at all. So why would you do it? What's the point of just giving the rule? I mean, think about it in practical terms. Your Honor, I'm here in this tort negligence case today, but before we begin, let me recite the rules of torts and negligence to you. You think a judge would let you do that? Of course not. The bar examiners live in the world of the practice of law, not the academics of law. And I think this is a consistent misunderstanding that gets perpetuated from generation to generation about what works. And the reality is that you can put all of that on your paper, and you may pass the bar exam, but it is not a causal relationship. See, here's what I say to people often. They'll tell me, well, I put rules on and I got a passing score. Yeah, and I say, did you wear jeans to the bar exam? Yes, I did. Well, maybe it was the genes that caused you to pass. You see, it's not causality, it's just correlative. And I think that's what happens is that people think that this is causation when it's really just correlation. You might have put it in your answer. It didn't get you anything, but it was there. And so as a result, people start thinking, that's what I should be doing. I should put the law in first. Because then, according to Ms. Mulbrake, what should happen is that you should then explain how the law applies. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you start with what the argument is and then apply the law that you need to that argument? You see, if you stood up and said, here's all the law I know, and now let me try and shoehorn some of that problem into that law, well, what's going to happen? A lot of it's not going to fit. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant. To go back to this example of negligence, well, not every element of the tort of negligence is going to be in dispute. Not everything has to be talked about. And in the practice of law, if you talk about things that don't matter, the judge is going to bench slap you. They're going to say, counselor, not interested, don't want to hear it. Your client isn't going to pay you hundreds of dollars an hour to talk about things that don't matter. The jury's not going to be happy with you wasting their time on things that don't matter. You see where we're going with this. You've got to be economical and efficient. So what happens is that when you're told to write these broad statements and then to make some attempt to just kind of somehow get the facts up next to it, but you never make the arguments. You never show what the positions of the parties are. Well, that is absolutely ineffective. It doesn't work. It doesn't give the examiners what they want to see. Now, this article in National Jurist goes on to say, you must therefore memorize the elements to every cause of action along with every defense and learn where to apply them. Your bar outlines will be structured in a manner that makes learning the various causes of actions and their defenses a straightforward task. Gag me. If that's what your outlines are doing, if that's the way you're studying, you're already in trouble. You're already way behind the curve. You're already in a position where you're likely to be unsuccessful. Why? Because you cannot even conceivably memorize every element to every rule and every defense, right? You know that. We all know that. So why do we pretend that there's some great fiction that we're going to be able to do that? Why? Because then we sell mnemonics and devices and outlines and other things. And even in this article, the author says there's no magic pill to guarantee your success over this last great hurdle. There's no quick fix. Yeah, you're right. And there's no ability to be successful by memorizing. So this whole idea of memorize and then somehow hope that what you've memorized meets up with the fact pattern is just backwards. What you want to do is take the fact pattern, build from that, make the arguments that each side to a dispute would have, and then apply the law as it comes to you, as you understand it and know it, to support those arguments. And then last, to reach a conclusion. Doesn't that make more sense? Have you ever seen a lawyer use IRAC in front of a court? Never. Never, ever. When is the last time those of you who are practicing law used IRAC in a memo? Never. Or years and years and years ago. So why do we teach it? Well, we don't at Celebration Bar Review, but many bar reviews do, because it's what law students learned, and it's easier to let them keep doing what they learned, even when it's not relevant to the exam they're taking. You see, there's a really cynical game that goes on here, and the cynical game works like this. It says, hey, we know the bar pass rates are bad, and we know we prepare a lot of students, but because we prepare a lot of students, even though the rates are bad, doesn't bother us. No matter what we do, they're still going to be bad. So why take the effort to change things and do things differently? We'll just let it go along. And, about half the people will pass now, and in some jurisdictions, fewer than half will pass. And, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I think that's a really horrible way to function. I want every one of my students to pass. I want to give them every tool I can give them to be successful on the exam. I'm not playing a big numbers game to make sure that I've got every student taking the bar in my course or anything close to that. But the ones that I've got, I want to make sure that they do well. And the truth is that if these big box bar reviews cared enough about their individual students, they'd do the same thing. But they really don't. It's really about the numbers to them. And so they just let you do what you did in law school, even though the bar exam is not a law school exam. Well, I got to admit, I do get worked up. This stuff makes me crazy. And you might be saying, I don't know. What difference does it make? I'll memorize a little. I won't do some of this other stuff. Yeah, I know it feels like inside baseball. But here's the reality. If you're taking a course that's predicated on the idea of memorization, you are going to study differently, you're going to write differently, you're going to prepare differently, and you're going to freak out before the bar exam when it suddenly occurs to you that you don't know anywhere near enough material, no matter how long you've been studying or how many hours you put in. And I've talked to people who've put in 500, 600 hours or more who had exactly that feeling. On the other hand, if you take an approach like ours that's holistic, that says we're going to teach you the law through repetition rather than memorization, we're then going to show you how to apply the law you know in the context of a fact pattern rather than asking you to memorize and recite rules and elements abstractly. And then we're going to apply that in a way that makes the writing make sense and gives you the ability to dig into a multi-state question and get to the right answer much more effectively and more efficiently. It's a way better way to study and to take the exam. Here's something I can share with you. Our students in the February 2018 exam reported finishing each section of the MBE in less than 2.5 hours. Interesting, isn't it? So you don't actually have to grind all the way through the exam in order to be successful. So I just want to caution you, I guess my sort of endpoint on these two articles, and there were plenty more, I just picked these two out because they made me the craziest. But the reality is there's a lot of misinformation. There is a lot of bad information. There is a lot of self-serving bad information out there. Be very careful about what you read and hear. Now, you may disagree entirely with everything I've said in today's webinar or in today's podcast. I can live with that. I'm okay with that. I put it out there, and I'm more than happy to engage in conversation and debate with you about it. We've got an empirical track record for 25 years that proves that we're right about what we say, and common sense, more than anything else. Common sense should tell you that people will do better if they have a holistic approach. Common sense will tell you that people will do better if they don't try to memorize and recite. And if you just rely on your common sense, I think you're going to do so much better on the bar exam than going down these rabbit holes that some bar review providers and some dinosaurs think that you ought to be following. All right. Well, that's my message. I probably didn't make any friends in the bar review world this week, but that's okay. I can live with that. I hope that this was helpful to you, and so glad again to have all of you on the podcast and spending your time with us. We will be back again next week. We'll continue to look at trends and things that are happening, and start to gear up for the July 2018 exams, and getting ready for the release of results in April, starting out in Florida, the first big jurisdiction that will release results. Just a quick reminder, our free webinar, Thursday, March 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you sign up for that here on the video page or in the show notes. And then we'll see you on that webinar for how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. And we'll see you along the extra mile next Wednesday when we come back to you with more information. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Bye.